Afternoon Talk on SAFM.
Right, let's get to the second half of the Afternoon Talk Show. I'm Ashraf Garda. Great that you're part of it. We had some fantastic guests this week, I can tell you now. And today, I think many people are saying, sort of even yesterday, I can tell you this, Adam, people saying, tell me, is Adam really coming so I can sort of clear my desk? Now, whether that's good in terms of productivity, I don't really know. But it's great that you've joined us, and thanks for allowing us to put you in the spotlight.
It's a real pleasure to be here.
Indeed. And congratulations on the new position.
Thank you very much.
Vice-Chancellor of the University of Witwatersrand. What's a nice ring to it, isn't it?
It is. I mean, it's something that I approach with a little bit of trepidation. It's a big institution. It's a great institution. There's some great vice-chancellors it's had. It's important for the nation as a whole to ensure that WITS works, and so it's a big challenge, and I'd love to be part of it.
And is it something that you coveted?
Yeah, I mean, it would be unfair to say that I wasn't keen on it. I mean, I did apply for the job. It was a place that I studied at 22 years ago. And I never thought of myself as somebody who would aspire to be the Vice Chancellor of WITS. But a whole set of circumstances emerged over the last 25 years that landed me in the kinds of positions where I thought I could make a contribution, and therefore it was something that I was quite keen on. I think WITS is a great institution. I think it can make not only a fantastic contribution nationally by producing good graduates and good research, but I think it can make a fantastic contribution internationally. And I think it's one of those institutions that can be regarded as one of the great global institutions, but from the African continent. For me, that's the great.
And you think it's there now, or it potentially can be?
I think it potentially can be. I think it needs to do slightly more than it has done, and that's something that we all need to collectively work at. I think its current management have done, and its current staff and students have done great, but there's more to do. But I think it could be one of those great institutions that, in 20, 25 years, when people talk about the great institutions of the world, I think WITS could be one of it. And it's fantastic and important that when people talk about the world's greatest universities, at least 2 or 3 come from the African
Absolutely,
continent.
and certainly from South Africa too. Well, I'll tell you what, let me invite your opinions. If you want to sort of call in and say hi to Professor Adam Habib, certainly do so. 0891104207. As you know, it's very much a personality profile in the Spotlight feature that we do every single afternoon. So if you want to talk about his life, if you know Adam Habib pretty well, if you're a friend of his, family member, I don't know, I have no idea who's listening, but if you want to say hi to a friend or a colleague that's absolutely great, or a relative too, you can certainly do that to 0891104207. SMS is 34701. You can tweet to me, Ashraf Garda, the same on SAFM Radio, and you can do it on Facebook as well. Adam Habib, by the way, is on Twitter. He's called Ad Habib, so just ADHIBIB. Now, that's the good news. The bad news, Adam says you hardly use it.
I don't, but I should start.
You need to. You've got to catch up with Professor Jonathan Jensen, who's quite active with it, I can tell you now. So maybe some hard work that you need to put in. Interesting for you, I mean, it's ironic. Normally, sort of being elevated to the position of Vice Chancellor, puts you in the spotlight, but you're in this unique position that you are very much in the spotlight already. So thanks to your political commentary in the main.
That's right. I have been. I've at 2 levels. One at the level of, for a long while, I was an activist of one kind or the other. And in a lot of ways, my commentary is in part my own engagement with the nation on national issues. And it's the easiest way that I can imagine, given my career, where I am, etc. So I have a fairly high profile. And that's kind of, and allows me to this thing. So at one level I was taken aback by all of the publicity around getting the WITS job. And Shirona often tells me, well, this is the VC of WITS.
You are in WITS after all.
And there's a lot of profile to the position. But it also in part had to do with the fact that my political analysis, I engage people at multiple levels, and people all over the place stop me and say congratulations, and it's really a great thing.
How that profile of yours, I mean, do you know whether that in fact helped your position in getting the job?
I think in part it helped, but I think in part it raises an obstacle. I think the fact that it helps is that I think a vice chancellor's role, in part, not only, but in part, particularly a vice-chancellor of a university like Witwatersrand, has to be part of the public discourse. You cannot be the VC of the University of Witwatersrand and not be part of the national discourse, because this is one of the great universities of this nation and this continent. And so it seems to me it's absolutely crucial for you to be. So I think at that level, there is that profile. There is a concern, I would imagine, that this is not only somebody who's a political analyst, is controversial. He raises all kinds of issues that make some people happy and make other people
Because
unhappy.
interesting in this case now, your students, and I mean, Wits historically has been amongst the more radicalized students, if I can call it that. They would know your opinion, which is very different compared to other vice chancellors.
That's right. And so I think a lot of people would wonder, yes, you need to be part of the public discourse, but we might be more concerned about some of the commentary. Or some people might say, well, in some of your discourse, you might alienate certain important stakeholders who you need to work with in your capacity as VC. I must say that most people think that South African political leadership figures are not mature. I think they're fantastically mature. For years, I've been fairly critical. But I have a very good relationship, and I've never found my interactions, whether as a deputy vice chancellor now or previously as the head of the democracy and governance at the Human Science Research Council, where we did a lot of research for government figures and leaders and departments. I never found people actually see that as an obstacle. This is
so meaning what? You could be critical of a political leader in public, and yet when you meet, there's this wonderful warmth that you'd have.
I might not always have warmth, but I do often have professional engagement. And I think people have been open to that. So I've had people that I've been, cabinet ministers that I've been very critical with, who've subsequently signed research contracts with me in my institutional capacities. And that I find absolutely mature. I think that's the way a nation should behave. So a lot of people find that it's, people can be difficult. But I have very good relationships with cabinet ministers, with political figures across the political divide. And yet I'm quite critical of many of them across the political divide on different issues.
Okay, so there you are. Maybe having your cake and eating it. I'll get to some of the callers. Kaiser, just stick around for a minute. Samuel as well, I'll take your call too. I'll also read some of the SMSs. 34701. It's going to cost 2 rands as we put questions through to Adam Habib now. Professor Adam Habib, of course, was the Vice-Chancellor, officially Vice-Chancellor Designate. Is that the right title?
Yes, it will be Vice-Chancellor Designate from the 1st of March until the end of February. I'm still Deputy Vice-Chancellor at the University of Johannesburg.
Okay. Lots more. We'll talk to him as we put him in the spotlight right after this.
Afternoon Talk on SAFM.
Let's get to some of the callers. 0891 104 as we put Professor Adam Habib in the spotlight. Kaiser in Durban. Hi.
Hi, Ashraf. Congratulations to my former lecturer.
Thank you very much.
I don't know whether are you VC and principal or just VC?
VC and principal, actually.
Congrats. That was my political science 1 and 2 lecturer at the then University of Durban. So we're very proud for what you have done. Including your political commentation that you do. And one must appreciate all the discourses that you taught us in political science. One question, though, are you still a radical left? Or have you shifted?
Wait for the answer. Are you still a radical left or are you shifted to centre?
No, I think I still am radical. I probably have, my radical comrades will think I've shifted slightly, but I think I still am fairly radical. What drives me, at least in my commentary and in my writings, is issues around, are poor people taken seriously? Are people responsive to their interests? Much of my writing still touches on that. It touches on inequality all the time. I think that's one of our big tragedies over the last 18 years. We've done a lot of good things, but we haven't addressed inequality. And as long as we don't address inequality, we don't address some of the great social pathologies.
Kaiser, do you want to give us an anecdote maybe of just how radical Adam Habib, radical left he's been in his lecturing days with you?
I mean, whatever you still find in his commentary now, I mean, that's just Adam. He got us going in political science 1 and 2. We were fresh from school. South Africa was just going through transition. Negotiations had just started. He really kept us busy in class. At that time I was in the Black Consciousness Movement, and there was a friend of mine, Ernest, in KwaZulu-Natal. He was with the Charterist. So we used to have very interesting arguments in class. That much I miss about him.
Okay. Well, I tell you what, it's not ironic, I think, not without irony, I think, the fact that you called Kaiser and now we have a chancellor here. So something of like the German conquest, maybe, I don't know. Thanks for that, Kaiser.
All the best, Adam.
Thank you very much.
There you are. Did ask if someone said I met Adam in the 1980s. His roots are in education for transformation when he worked there. Another one saying, congratulations, Professor. Was my alma mater. Just love your political analysis. You're a bit of a celebrity, you know that, right? Samuel in Centurion, hi.
Hi, Ashraf.
Yeah,
and
hi,
congratulations to the professor.
Thank you very much.
I am a vet student, Prof. Adam, and then I'm one of the people who are pessimistic about your appointment, so to speak. I wasn't happy to hear that you were appointed because to me, I have some things that comes across that I'm not happy with. For the time you've been at UJ, I'm struggling to find out how you've moved that particular institution forward to an extent that now you'll be able to take vets to another level. Like, for example, that incident when you had to disassociate UJ with the Israeli university, and you were part of the administration. I'm not saying you did it yourself. But then, to me, such decisions, while you are part of the administration, they come out as political as compared to being academic. That's one. And then secondly, there are many things that go on at UJ, exams being rigged and all that. When you move to vets, I really feel like this now will be kind of another UJ. And then
Okay.
I'm not being negative, but you have to convince me that you really are going to take this institution to another level.
All right, let's get a response. Samuel, thanks for that one there. Right, so okay, there's a skeptic.
Well, fair enough. I think that people have different approaches and understandings of it. I must say, I think that UJ has done very well over the last 5 years. I don't think that that's been a product of Adam Habib. I think it's a product of the collective of UJ. Its management, its academics, its staff. Its research output was, people will tell you this, the data. It's seen as one of the great success stories, actually, of the mergers. Its public profile is increased dramatically. Its research output
And almost unrecognizable from its
right.
sort of Afrikaans
That's
past,
right.
Yeah.
Its research output is up by 140%. It is a completely different institution. It's one of the big institutions that's integrated fairly well. We have got a lot of challenges. There's no questions about it. But we've also got some great successes, and most people would recognize that there's been some fantastic case studies of this. The Israeli thing is an interesting thing. Firstly, the decision wasn't made by management. It was made by the Senate. And the reason, the Vice Chancellor Aaron Rinsberg was I think had a lot of foresight in this. He said that in a university, the most important structure is the academy, and the academy is located in the Senate. And the Senate, however difficult the decision, they must grapple with this decision. And the decision was, by the way, a very complex one. It said we broke the institutional relationship. We terminated the institutional relationship, but we will continue individual academic engagements and even sign contractual obligations in this regard. So we did both. And there are parts of the Palestinian lobby that weren't happy about that, and there were parts of the Israeli lobby that were not happy.
Both felt you've
right.
either gone too far or too little. Yeah.
There were reports subsequently when SAUJS, the South African Jewish Students Association, a couple of months later, wanted to have an event and came to me and said, we would like you to chair that event. And I did. And I had a lot of approaches from the Palestinian lobby saying, don't do that. And I said, well, their argument to me is that I should do it because they're worried about security. And they want to know that they are protected. And as a senior leader, they have asked me to do that. And in my capacity as the Deputy Vice Chancellor, I've had to do that. Now, I got very strongly condemned by the Palestinian lobby. I got applauded by the Israeli lobby.
How do you handle that?
Well, you got to make hard choices. You want to be in a position like this. You have to understand that sometimes you have to decide with your conscience. And your conscience is the first principle of this university is a university must be a free space for ideas. We might not like all the ideas.
So sometimes those ideas suits other people's agendas, but
that's right.
Yeah.
But it must be a free space. And so for me, there is important thing. The idea is, well, what am I going to do at WITS? Well, the first thing that is it's not WITS's agenda is not Adam Habib's agenda. WITS's agenda has to be the collective of WITS's agenda. It's academics, it's students, it's staff. I see myself, if you like, as an enabler. I know it sounds corny, as the servant of the various stakeholders to try and see if we can bring together a coherent plan. And that's what I hope to do. I've said to people said to me, well, in my presentation, would you deliver higher wages? Will you deliver lower fees? Well, you can't do both. What we need to do is sit down and develop collectively a coherent plan that all of us buy into. It's going to be shared sacrifice, but for shared gain. And what does all of that mean? And that's, for me, my first 3 months is going to be talking to everybody.
So away from Wits, I mean, do you have a personal mission statement?
Yeah, I mean, my thing is somebody said to me a long time ago, what I would like to do is when Adam Habib leaves this world, I'd like people to say, you know what, the bloody bugger made a difference. In a small way, he made a contribution. And that, for me, is what I want to do. It's what drives me in everything I do, is can I make a small contribution?
But the difference has got to be positive.
Yes, it has to be a positive contribution. It must be a contribution that assisted with others in making this a better place, a better planet for everybody, including its poorest people. And that's something that I think drives me. I think it drives.
Now, interesting one. I mean, certainly as an academic, you've made a difference and then hopefully you'll even do more so as a political analyst. We have no doubt you're extremely highly rated. There's no doubt about that. Now, yesterday, just ironically, we discussed political analysts and their role. And the suggestion was that they actually have too much clout. They carry just far too much clout. Well, what are your thoughts about it? That they have too much power. They become these celebrities that actually can sort of hold sway over a nation.
Yeah, I'm not so. I mean, firstly, the question is, there's an assumption that political analysts all agree on things. And I know a lot of them. I know Stephen Friedman, I know Aubrey Machiki, I know Kalela Mangu, I know Msebisi and Letiana, I know all of these guys. And we are a very diverse lot of people. We disagree on a lot of issues. So often when people get angry, they might find a convenient scapegoat, which is the analyst or the journalistic community.
Because you see, the other suggestion is not only do they all agree, but they all plot and plan together.
That's right.
You're part of a club that says,
that's right,
we're going to do this.
That's right. And if you put all three of us or all 10 of us in a room, you'll come up with 20 views on any substantive view. We're ideologically different. We have very different views. Some of us are great friends. Some of us are not very good friends. So I think that it's a much more complex to say, do they have too much? I think what analysts are is they meant to interpret. It doesn't mean that the interpretations are always right.
Of course, right.
They are meant to be a sounding board and multiple sounding boards. Their usefulness is not in the individual actions and in the individual's views. It's in the plurality of your views. Because if you listen to three of them and they give you three different views, they force you to think in different ways. And that's where their usefulness.
So you're saying that there must be a sense of humbleness about political analysts.
That's right.
Powerful.
I would also like to see more academics do it. Because I think a lot of academics are founded on deep research. And often having their deep research. Now, there's a trick to that because you do have to speak in ways that can speak to ordinary people and very quickly. And that's a skill that you need to learn. But I would like to see more analysts ensconced in research and more academics engaging in the public discourse.
Okay. Now, about a year ago on this very show, we did a poll to say who's the most, popular, who gets your vote as the number one analyst in the country. And I'm sorry to say you were only number two, okay? Someone out of Fikeni won that vote. But I mean, that tells you, and we had massive votes, year, on air, SMSs, Twitter, Facebook, etc., etc. How do you feel about it? That whether you won two, that means you're in the top 3 or 4 certainly of people who people respect highly for your political analytical views.
Yeah, I think I'm gratified. I mean, it says to me that people listen, and I'm thrilled that people listen. I'm humbled as well by that. I mean, I think that the one trick about if you want to be part of the public discourse is I don't think people look at your race or look at your idea. What people are interested in is, are you ensconced in the society? Are you applying tools to understand what the society is? But do you see yourself as a South African?
Yeah. Or are you on the outside just sort of taking...
That's right. And that is what I try to do. People talk about the other day, for me, I don't see myself as Indian, or I don't see myself as minority. I see myself as a South African. This is my country. This is my content. This is my world. And I'm going to interpret it the way I see it. And I'm going to try and worry about and so I'm not interested in a particular sector. I'm interested in this country. I'm interested in Afrikaners as much as I'm interested in African people.
Conversely, do you find that the public don't understand that? For example, you spoke about Stephen Friedman. I've often been told, I'm sure Stephen Friedman's views on Palestine has got to be anti-Palestinian because he's Jewish. And yet those that know better will know that certainly many of the pro-Israeli lobby would sort of throw him out. And probably the same with Zapiro, for example, right? I mean, do you find the same as well, that not only being of Indian or Asian descent, but also of Muslim descent, your ethnic group, whether you like it or not, expects you to bat for that?
Yeah, I think they do. But I think what is interesting and what I like is when I drive, where I walk anywhere, the people who come to tell me, "Hey, how's it, Adam? I liked your view," or whatever, is across the racial. And
that's important.
And that's important for me. If Muslims came to tell me that, or if white people came to tell me that, or simply African people came to, I would be worried. But when everybody, and what gratifies me is I'll sit at Doppio Zero someday and somebody will come and say, "I loved your view, I disagreed with your view." And then when I'm, they're filling petrol in the garage, the guy comes and says, "Hey, how's it, man? How are you?" "Yeah, I don't agree with you," or something like that. I love that, because that tells me I'm not appealing across racial boundaries. I'm appealing across class boundaries. And for me, that's important, because if you want to be a South African, you have to be able to speak to both poor and rich people, black and white, yellow and anybody in between. And it seems to me that for me is important.
Well, somebody asked a question which I think is also very important, depending on how you take it. Let's see if I can find it. Okay. While we're talking, by the way, I'll probably take a couple of calls. So 0891 104 207, 0891 104 207. In the spotlight is Professor Adam Habib, soon to be. So at the moment, the designate Vice Chancellor at Wits University, currently still, deputy at UJ, right?
Yeah.
And we'll talk about that. I'm trying not to get into the varsity issues, but someone's saying again, Professor Habib, I absolutely love your energy. Now, here's someone, Oletabo, saying, so where did Adam meet his wife? This is like a very important question, because she is so pretty. I met them at the Yusuf Daru centenary celebration or conference in 2009. Maybe you can answer that.
Well, I met her at the university, actually. She used to get a lift by me, and she used to get a lift, and we used to bump into each other, and we got to be, I used to very naughtily borrow notes from her, she was a much more diligent student than I was, and we fell in love, and that's how we met, and we got to know each other, and we got married, and there was irony. I often say that our experience at Wits, I was a student at Wits, and the reason we both landed up at Wits is because her family disliked me and my family disliked her.
So they both sent you packing.
No, and we ran away. We said to them, "You know what, we're going after Wits," and they thought that at least he or she will get away from the other. So yes, we should support this. What we didn't tell them was we were both going to Wits. And so I often describe Wits was a place where we became refugees of love, if you like.
In terms of your academics, I mean, what inspired you? Because you're from Durban. Is there anything in
I'm actually from Pietermaritzburg.
From Maritzburg, okay.
And was a student at the university there. And undertook became fairly politicized at a very young age, partly through the 1980 boycotts, and then went to university and then got immediately involved there, and landed up doing initially science, but then decided I wanted to do political science, because I thought if I did political science, they'll teach me about all of the political activities that I was doing. It did very little of that.
Okay.
But I thought I'd be a lawyer, but never landed doing law, because at that time you required Latin and Afrikaans, and I wasn't very proficient in it. So I never landed up doing that. Went into honors and masters in political science, and then suddenly, paradoxically, became an academic. Went over to UDW, which was an incredible experience for the first 10 years. I was served as an academic there. I became part of the union there. UDW.
We're going to find out who inspired you besides your wife. Let's just take one quick call before we get to news headlines. Pat on the line. Hi, Pat. Pat, hi.
Yes. I have a question on the issue of race. They say that in looking into the future, the black race might go extinct, because if you look at population, the white race seems to be more domineering. So I just wanted your opinion. We know that we are all Homo sapiens, and the concept of race is not important. But the black race, there is a possibility of it going into extinction. going forward. Your comment on that?
Okay, Pat, we'll get that in a sec. Okay, thanks for that. Quick one, if you can, answer that.
Well, I don't think that's going to happen. I think that there are too many black people in the world, whether you like it or not, or whether you want to for them to go extinct or not. I do think this is true of every one of us, by the way. I don't believe there's any coherent black or white or Indian for that matter. I think if you actually just look at gene structures, every one of us is mixed in some form or the other, whether we want to think that or not. But do I think black, brown, white, any of us are going to extinction? Is no. I just think humanity is over the centuries going to evolve in a much more mixed way, whether we like it or not. And some of us will look black, and some of us will look white, and some of us will look all kinds of complexions.
And just live with it, indeed. Yeah. All right, I'll look at some others. Someone saying, hi, salam, congratulations. Your late father would have been extremely proud of your appointment. It doesn't give a name, which is a huge pity. I'd love to actually have read that out with a name. We'll do more of that. Adam Habib with me is the man in the spotlight. So South Africa, pretty well now, recovering, I would think. Some of the comments, okay, that comment from your father would be proud of your late father comes from the Matter family. Marina saying, Professor Habib, I love your passion, your guts and your energy. And there's more. There's Kathy saying, I'm an ardent Adam Habib fan. Always enjoy his balanced opinion, and it helps that he is so good looking with that sexy voice. People like you. Let's talk about this voice, because two distinct things about you is your hair. It's shorter now than what it was, but it's grey, and that voice is unusual. Well, yeah, how much has that worked in terms of, because the truth is, you're right, if you've got 5 analysts, they could all sound very, very similar. The fact that your voice is almost a bit coarse, but it does get you to stick out. It's like, I remember this person.
Yeah, well, they used to call me Grunter when I was in primary school. And so I used to be incredibly embarrassed by it. My mum, as I recall, took me to a whole series of doctors to try and figure out whether they could fix this out, and it never got fixed out. So, that's interesting. It's people, most people I know were turned off by that voice in my younger days.
It seems to be working down. And the hair, the hair's shorter now.
It is. It was very long at one stage. Fatima and I had an agreement where I could grow. I've always loved long hair. My children love long hair as well. And I always wanted to grow long hair. I wanted a ponytail.
Yeah.
And she was horrified by the fact. And she said, I look like a drug lord. But we had a deal.
With a coarse voice as well.
That's right. So we had a deal one year, but she'd allow me to grow my hair as long as I wanted, which I did. And then in return, she could determine my hairstyle for the rest of my life. I thought it was a bad deal.
Okay. The compromise on your side,
right.
Effectively. And you've done that.
Yeah, I had a ponytail for a while, and that was really great. I loved it. And maybe one day I will. The problem is I might not be able to grow my hair that long again.
It gets us thinking, how do you spend your time sort of away from being in the spotlight? Because as you talk about other leaders like the Zumas and the Malemas, you yourself are in the spotlight. But away from that, where do you get the energy, the drive, the knowledge as well?
Yeah, family. I love family. Family has been great. My kids, my wife, my people close to me. I have some incredibly close friends, etc., all of whom have been really great for me in all kinds of ways. So spending time with them, having dinner, talking to them, engaging them, my immediate family, sometimes my more extended family, some incredibly close friends who have been great for that. And that's who these are people I have ideas with, and I have arguments with. And
do you find that when you meet in social gatherings, and we're talking strictly away from the glare of the media, that inevitably, because you've articulated views on national issues publicly, that people just expect you to repeat more of the same. So the discussion goes in that direction, or do you actually try and put a stop to it?
Yeah, sometimes I'm happy to engage these kinds of issues. I find I have some very interesting engagements. I go to the gym and in the sauna. There's something about naked
something
men.
Hot about that, yes.
Because naked men kind of think that they can talk all kinds of issues. So we have all of these fantastic issues and debates in the sauna at the gym. So
naked men having a heated discussion in the sauna.
That's right. I once said I'm going to start a column, The Views of Naked Men, and write this up. Just sit in the sauna and take notes.
Okay, now we know, right? Is there anything about that we don't know that you'd love to share with us anyway?
Well, I don't know. I'm quite a public figure. I'm shy. Most people are quite surprised by that. In a kind of paradoxical way, I'm a very shy individual. Often Fatima and people who are close to me would say that, it's really funny that you're that shy, because you come off as verbose and loud and all of that kind of stuff. But in the crowd, there's a level of anonymity. In the personal one-to-one engagements, it becomes a very personal relationship, and then I'm actually quite shy.
So who's the one public figure, and leaving aside Mandela, and it doesn't have to be a politician, that you really admire in South Africa right now?
Right now, I mean, I've always it changes but the person who I admire, frankly, is Zwelinzima Vavi. I'll tell you why. I think he's ensconced in a political party and in a movement. But when he needs to say things, even though it's not convenient and the people around him don't want it said, he's prepared to say it publicly. He's been one of the few people in the ANC who stood up openly and said, look, corruption is unacceptable, and that it takes away from poor people. And he's consistently heard in this. And he doesn't do it in the hallowed halls of Parliament. He does it in loudly.
It doesn't matter where.
And and he does it consistently. And that's made him sometimes unpopular in this thing. I think he's perhaps been. A couple of months ago, I read this thing where when businessmen were asked, which is the most honest politician you can find, and every one of them said Zwelinzima Vavi. Now, how many societies where the businessman will argue that the general secretary of the largest trade union federation
would be the honest
is
guy,
the most honest guy, and people might disagree with him, but he's brave and he's heard, and that's something that I think is absolutely important. I'll give you another figure who I think is absolutely heard, and again makes people uncomfortable, is Mampele Rampele.
Yes,
I think she's opinionated. She's got views. She's going to be heard, and she ruffles feathers. She ruffles feathers across the board, across the sector. She ruffles businessmen's feathers, but she ruffles politicians' feathers, and I think that that's absolutely crucial.
Okay, great stuff. We're continuing. Another 5-6 minutes to go. Chatting, well, slightly more, in fact, with Professor Adam Habib. Some of the comments. Zahira Bam Ismail saying, a phenomenal man with great insights. If only he could influence education at school level, what a difference we would see. And then Boyani Green commenting, saying, well, Professor Habib received from the public sphere, as it were now, that he has been appointed to run WITS, given the fact that running an academic institution of WITS's caliber is no walk in the park. Okay, so and Madni Halim saying, tell us about your chicken cooperative at Pietermaritzburg in the 1980s. Madni knows something we don't know. Paul Noriega saying, first question, why did Professor Adam Habib leave UJ? Will he consider increasing the apps of WITS in future, since our secondary education system is still not providing quality education to our brothers and sisters? There are many SMS. I'm just picking out some of them. And Zingsani, I'll get your call in just a second. Okay, quick answers on those?
Well, on Matti Halim's question, we had a couple of years ago, in the mid-80s, we decided, like good communists, we're going to do is we're going to set up a chicken cooperative, and we're going to run it, and it's going to be a cooperative where we're equally shared, etc. And we went and we bought little chicklets, and we kept them, and all of them died within a couple of days because none of us had any idea how to be a chicken.
That's would be a capitalist.
That's right. So we didn't do that. I mean, UJ, we've done a lot of work. I think all of our public institutions, our institutions, I've learned a lot from colleagues in UJ. I hope to apply that, and I hope to learn even more from colleagues in WITS. WITS is another national institution I go to.
Do you see yourself seriously in a position now where you actually can change education in the country? I mean, you're not the Minister of Education, I know that, but I sort of teased you when I met you. You are the Minister of Education. I mean, you're going to be at the helm of a major institution.
I think you can do a lot if you work with people at WITS. I think WITS can do a hell of a lot. I think it cannot resolve the problems of education, but I think it can create some fantastic research. It can create incredible graduates, but it must be responsive and it must create hope. It must be a place that also poor people can go to. It mustn't simply become the preserve of the rich, but it must be a place where standards apply and you just don't get in because of your race or you're rich or something like that. You must be there. It must be open to poor people, but it must be challenge them to be the best that they can be.
So you don't want to compromise standards. Okay, let's get to another call. Zingisani in Germiston. Hi, welcome to the show. Hello.
Good afternoon.
Yeah, good afternoon. How's it, man?
Good afternoon to the Prof.
Thank you.
Go ahead. Yes.
I just have one question for the Prof. Since he has been appointed as a new Vice Chancellor of WITS, are you to be a student leader at WITS in the early 2000s? and the issues that we're dealing with, which have to do with the race and class, still being dealt with by student leadership today, I want to know, how is the Prof planning to deal with the issue of racism, since it has been institutionalized in institutions like that for a number of decades? I mean, we're in 2012, 2013, but if you look at the issues that affect black and particularly African students, are issues that would have affected those students 10 years ago. And it's issues that deal, in my view, it's a matter of race and class, which has become institutionalized.
Let's get a quick response. We're just sort of running out of time. Thanks for that call. I want to get a quick one.
Yeah, I think that, look, this is an important issue. I don't think the issues of African people at WITS is going to be resolved by WITS. I think that the historical tragedies of our past, the disparities of our past, live with us. And we're going to have to confront them. This is why I think we have to redress our past injustices. And I think institutions like WITS have to do that. And I think the one way we should be doing it at WITS, given its mandate, its mission, is to be an institution that creates a new citizen, that addresses our historical disparities, but simultaneously changes people and allows them to aspire to be the best they can. But they must see themselves as South Africans at the end of it. And it must be cosmopolitan. Otherwise, it's not a university. It has to remain cosmopolitan.
Yeah, fair enough.
But it must be responsive to poor people.
Career highs for you? Quick one.
Career highs. I mean, this is becoming Vice Chancellor of WITS is a great, this thing is probably the highest thing. Having been a Deputy Vice Chancellor, I've been really blessed,
What about career lows?
Career lows, I was at WITS.
The chicken farm that failed.
The chicken job farm that failed. I applied for a position once at UDW as a dean. I got the position, but I was never appointed because the selection committee found it. But there was all kinds of divisions by that time at UDW. It never happened, and that was a tragedy. I would have loved to work in that position in UDW at that time.
Your recipe for success. I mean, why do you think you've been successful?
Well, firstly, I think you have to think outside the box. I think if you're South African and you want to become responsive to South Africans, I think you have to realize that rules only take you so far. What you got to think about is our context and how do we fashion a solution for our context. Others might have done it in a different way. We need to learn from them. But we need to custom make solutions for our own context. And I think that's absolutely, it defines my managerial practice. It defines my research. It defines my public commentary.
Interesting. Clive Barker made the same comment about being Bafana coach years ago. He said, it can't be Brazil, we can't be Germany. We just have to find out what works for South Africa. We've got about a minute and a bit to go. An autobiography, you haven't yet done it, right?
No, I haven't.
John Carney asked him this. John Carney was my guest yesterday. He said, ask me at 75, I'll do so. What would you title it if you had to?
Well, I always said it's an interesting thing. I don't know, an interesting life, maybe.
Yeah. Some said that's rather boring. We'll see. Is there a book you could recommend us to read now? Something that's really profound.
Well, I'm reading what I'm at the moment reading is Kolela Mangu's Biko, and I must say I'm incredibly moved by it. I think it's a fantastic story.
Yeah.
I think it's a story about what could have been and what wasn't. But
we never really know, isn't it? Is that a great quote you can share with us?
That's a difficult one. I don't know. Context is important. It's really the driving thing that should define who we are. From the scholarships we construct to the solutions we have around education and secondary education, we have to understand: is South Africa? We are what we are because of successes and failures, tragedies and great moments of the last 350 years.
What's on your bucket list besides taking over the new job?
Well, I would one of the big things. Obviously, to try and build WITS as a great institution together with colleagues, there is something that drives me. To work with my children and make them great South Africans. My children drive me. They do great things. They are my inspiration because they represent a new generation. And I can be non-racial because it's politically, I understand I have to be. For them, it's natural.
Okay. Just lastly, lots of issues or problems around South Africa, but what's the one thing about South Africa that you are fiercely proud of?
Well, the fact that we made a transition. It's an amazing thing. If you just think about Palestine and Israel and all the other places, you just look at this. We pulled it off with all our problems. Good way
to end. We pulled it off. I think that's a great quote. You can check out lots of the Twitter on Adam Habib, and also check the hashtag Adam Habib as well. Thanks so much for your time. Thanks for allowing us to put you in the spotlight. And we will talk about Wits in detail maybe sometime in the future. Give you a chance to sort of get in, settle in, and get the honeymoon over as well. 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 The honeymoon over as